I think as long as you have in mind what you need to teach and the learning outcomes, it becomes this. I don't want to say performance because it's not about me, but the teaching is this highly engaged artistic outpouring, from the coach that's received by the athlete and empowering the athlete. Again, teaching the athletes to match and mirror and work within rhythm, dance, is maybe the training outcome in general. And then we just put increasing progressive stress around those rhythms of that day in the weight training. So the training really is in the warm up, let's say. It is in the relational and self-awareness. Whereas a lot of times the warm up is just this, list of things to check off. And then you get to the weight training.
That was Paul Cater, and you're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our longtime sponsor, Simply Faster. There are a lot of sports technology companies out there, but Simply Faster is the only website you can go to that features an online store that covers the bandwidth of training technology, from force plates to timing systems to muscle stimulators and more. Some products of Simply Faster that I use and love include things like the Freelap timing system in K-Box or coaches' favorites such as GymAware. Recently, Simply Faster has added 2 units that as a coach you should definitely take a look at. The first is the Muscle Lab Contact Grid, which is an extremely affordable and portable, step-by-step, literally, system to collect data on jumps, bounds, sprints, agility, hurdle hops, and really as much as your creative mind can imagine. In what used to take a whole runway worth of data collecting strips, the Contact Grid does it all with only 2 small strips that together cover up to 40 meters of sprinting. Ground contact time, step rates, rhythms, and beyond are at your fingertips with this device. Another new unit, the VO2 Master, is an ultra-portable gas exchange analyzer. Don't guess on energy system development when you can get direct insight into VO2 capabilities in relation to specific sports skills, rather than being hooked up to tubes on a treadmill, or worse yet, a cycle ergometer to get a VO2 max. Think of the VO2 Master as your own gas exchange lab without the tubes and wires. Deepen your analysis in the specific conditioning preparation of your athletes with the VO2 Master today. These products and incredible customer service make Simply Faster your go-to for your sports technology needs. I'm happy to have partnered with them in sponsoring this podcast. Their support has been tremendous, so check them out today at simplyfaster.com. That's simply with an I, faster.com. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. It's awesome to have you guys here, and I know I'm excited for every show, but this show is definitely a special one. This is the first full-length episode that I've done with my friend Paul Cater. Paul was actually on a roundtable segment for episode 197, where we talked for about 25 minutes. And ever since then, I've just been thinking about that show, that full length show we'll do when he comes back on. And so the time was finally right. Paul and I were able to sit down and just have a really great conversation on the fine details of his total training session. Last show, we talked for 25 minutes just about creating a story around training, and as well as his return to sprinting as a prime or pinnacle portion of his coaching process. But this one, we get into some other elements. And so just to give a quick background, those of you who are not familiar with Paul is the owner of the Alpha Project in Salinas, California, which is Monterey Bay area, for those of you who may not be familiar with that locale. Paul has spent time training basically athletes on just about every level, from the pro ranks, the London Wasps in rugby, Baltimore Orioles, to training athletes of all ages and abilities, from local youth to collegiate athletes to Olympians to even grandmothers and grandfathers at his gym. And so a man of diverse experience, cultural experience. Paul is a guy who he'll be in the gym training and then painting a painting in between sets. He's an outside the box thinker, and we can all learn so much from him. I absolutely have. Paul has changed my just vision as a coach to what I believe a good training session is. And it's like, if you could see every year of my coaching process as a full-time strength coach, you could see Paul's impact on that every year, the more I learned from him. And my athletes, I've certainly was able to serve them better for that. So we're going to get into it today. the nuts and bolts to Paul's system. He's going to talk about rhythm and flow in a training session. He's going to talk about awareness, vulnerability, and all these elements that he's trying to cultivate and create an environment around that really lead up to that crescendo, that weightlifting experience. And I don't want to spoil the story at all. I don't want to try to steal any thunder. So we're just going to get right into that. This was an awesome show with my friend Paul, and I know you guys are really going to enjoy this one. So let's get on to the show. All right. So I know I'm going to re-ask you this, Paul, because you just mentioned it a few minutes ago, but I think it's definitely worthy of telling again. But, we were just talking about running in adverse elements or being, weather and stuff like that and how that impacts the workout. But I know you had a little story about running down from a mountain and being in a little bit of fight and flight or fight or flight. What was going on there?
We were in a hike in Colorado at one of the 14,000 foot peaks. There was an old mine up there, an old, silver mine or something. And there's a few iron tools and remnants of the mine. And I thought, I have a history degree first and foremost from my undergraduate days. And I appreciate history. And so I'm going to take some of this home. So, the thunderstorm came in around 4:00, and and lightning was striking everywhere. And I think one of my greatest training memories ever was running down probably 3 miles, just downhill, down shale and rocks and nooks and crannies down this trail, in a purely exposed mountain top. And I think, man, that was one of the moments in my life I was super dialed in. I was fully engaged with my body, mind, and spirit, and praying I wouldn't get struck by lightning. But yeah, so I kind of I enjoy those natural elements when I train. For the fight or flight mechanism, whether it's pretending you're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger or getting struck, or actually going to get struck by lightning. I think there's something to that, creating that experience around training that we can learn from.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. That's where I was going to go with that, because I think that the best training sessions I've been in, and not just training, but also just experiences in team sport, it's like you lose the self a little bit and it's just about the moment. And I mean, what better way to be in the moment than to be in kind of a situation where your life is in a little bit of danger. You're afraid of being struck by lightning. You got to run. And I've been in not too many of those, but I've been in one in particular in my memory. And I remember thinking, man, if all training had some of this, or not all, but even once in a while, your outputs are just like so much higher, and it brings a really different element in. So, I mean, like you said, do you find yourself thinking about that sometimes where you have a training session, or just that general idea, does it cross your mind in the environment you're trying to create? I mean, you can't
Oh, sure. I think every day, I have to ask myself, did you create an experience that invokes maximal awareness and, within the scope of what the goal, adaptive goal is that day? Did I create an experience that supports that? And, without just having it be a maximal adrenaline situation, because I think, like I was saying earlier, that these kids especially get these, it's like they're adrenaline junkies. They have to have this massive hype or musical element, which I do think music's very important, but or everything's balls to the walls all the time. So I think creating an experience of both the deep introspective, meditative state, all the way to the collective experience of competition. And, there's a whole spectrum there, but yeah, you have to decide where in the day you're going to work on that spectrum, or within the session, or so that's a huge consideration every day. So how are you creating experience, and where do you want to go to do that?
You can't like actually put people's lives in danger, right? But like, well, a funny thing, I remember watching this, it was a swim coach in Australia, I want to say, and he had his swimmers take off to one side of the pool, like for like a 25 or 50, however long the pool was, I don't remember. But after they were like 10 meters in, he threw like a little, it wasn't a full grown, but like a little alligator in after him. And they're just swimming and just like, I don't know, that was pretty funny. I should put that in the show notes. But I think about, so that would be the literal, like, let's put you in some sort of state by adding a life or death like element. But I mean, how do you create that? I think a lot of strength coaches talk about, or coaches in general, like have a sense of urgency. I think that's kind of what they're chipping at, right? But I don't think it's something you can just tell someone to do per se. I mean, you can, try to conjure up a little bit, paste it on, and that's good. I mean, I don't disagree with coaches saying that at all. I think that's a good thing. But what are some ways that you create that element, or what are some tools in the toolbox to start creating that sense of urgency, flow state, something greater than yourself in a training session?
Well, let's work backwards. The you can't always have a football team situation where you have 50 guys around you when you're trying to bench press or PR, you're clean. So, and many of the athletes I work with aren't in that state. They're individual sport athletes or young females, things like that. It's not like a good fit for that whole thing. So you have to create, I think, a natural awareness of rhythm and melody and tuning, so to speak, at the beginning of the session, and a heightened awareness of self right from the get-go, and that will allow a rhythm like you kind of mentioned earlier, like almost like I dare say a church service where there's a flow, or like a dinner, or there's a beginning, a middle, and end. And so athletes can, I think, tune into a rhythm of a session and appropriate timings of even when the maximal loading is going to happen or things like that. So I think that's setting this table for a lead in, and like an apex and like a cool down, all that sort of, there's got to be a rhythm of the session. And once athletes understand that, then you can learn, I think, when to bring a little bit more energy and hype or even competitive element. And some days that changes, you pull out the old card that you get fired up right away, or you add a game, or you add a, whatever it is to peak that. But I don't know if that answers the question there, but I think tapping into the rhythmic cycles of the session, but also just the body itself is super important in the first 15 minutes of any time they walk in the door. And that has a lot to do with musical selection. I think it has a lot to do with the setting the environment and cultivating the vibe and initiating it and ushering that vibe in. And I think that's an art form. It takes practice.
Yeah. So let's we'll unpack that, and I want to get it because one of the first things that comes to my mind as you talk about that is, I think when it's time to work out, the typical attitude is, all right, let's just flip on Metallica or something angry or some whatever rap is popular now, and just something that has kind of the same general vibe to it. I always think about you either put on music that represents like a dark side of yourself that you don't want to go, or something that you want to subconsciously be like, oh, I want to listen to, like my old Tennessee want to listen to like gangster rap or something like, or I'm going to put on, metal.
You have an alter ego. You have an empowering feel that usually is associated with, every music has a message, and to say that, I don't listen to the words. The words are very powerful, whether you hear them subconsciously or not. So I think creating a positive but challenging environment, but there's different like downbeats, melodic tune, tuning of the body that, I think as a coach, you have to be really aware of to peak an athlete's awareness so that they can then respond to challenges and have that, fight or flight at the right times, whether you can support that fight or flight maximum adrenaline phase for an entire session, or whether it's 5 minutes during the point of the lifting. That's where the coach needs to orchestrate that, somewhat like a DJ.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you'd mentioned the church service analogy, like you have the announcements, you have the music, the main sermon or talk, you have the benediction, this fellowship, like there's different like elements to that. And I think that, like you said, to your point, like you turn on adrenaline face and you roll with adrenaline face for 60, 70, 80, like that you can't sustain that. It doesn't work to building the apex, the crescendo. And as I know we're going to get into is how you build that up and build that session up.
I think coaches hide behind it a little bit. I think, you try to create a culture of empowerment and awareness, but it's less. A lot of coaches, I don't think, approach the introspection, and then they'll have to say, okay, go take a yoga class or meditate. Every session should be somewhat formulaic in that regard. And I know church services, whatever denomination or religion, really have that formula of, self and then community experience. So I think that the training sessions need to have that same side of formula as well. But yeah, you can hide behind music for so long. You can hide behind team competitions for so long before just movement patterns and the development really isn't happening. Okay. And parents, and at the youth side of things, parents will pay for that for quite a while and mask the fact the kid isn't really getting better for the long term. It's kind of that glass ceiling situation, but they're having fun. They're puking in the corner. They're getting their money's worth. They're getting a free T-shirt, and they're creating the memory aspects, which is important. I'm not going to say it's not. Kids will remember the competitive element. I think that's half the battle. Whether that creates a robust athlete later in their career, I'm not convinced. And I think it doesn't.
I do think that athletes on some level, I mean, those bad memories, like I've talked with Dr. Tommy John about this, like sometimes the bad coaches are just as important as the good coaches in some respects, because you learn the extremes, you learn the polarity for one thing. But I do think that those teammates you've had, you could be like, oh, remember that workout? It was so-and-so and it was terrible. And maybe it was a bad workout. Maybe maybe it was overkill. Maybe the adaptation wasn't great, and again, I don't model my own practice after, regularly throwing down those workouts at athletes and saying I did a good job, because obviously people who listen to this podcast know that's not my vibe. But not that I think it's good to work hard from time to time, but I don't know. I had a funny thought too, almost like, private sector training, like throw it up in the corner, that's worth $30. Like got our money's worth out of that one, or whatever. There's
values. What are the KPIs, so to speak, for parental value?
Yeah. What do we value? What do we put a dollar value on? Yeah, for training.
Yeah. Does the kid come home with an experience? Okay. That's only, that is important. It's only half of it. And again, are kids really learning their own bodies? Are they going through the quiet time before the hype time? And
yes,
I don't know if that's it's hard to sell rest time, and it's hard to sell it's hard to sell variable. Like if parents don't see the immediate theme and how it's relative to little Johnny getting faster, then it's hard to sell. It's hard to sell a whole system where you might have these variable approaches to warm up, to tuning the body, to all these things. So it's a little bit of an art to sell to parents, and I speak to those who are training youth, but also those who are training elite athletes. I think there's the same thing's applicable. You're always serving somebody, and there's someone paying, whether it's a GM or an owner of a team or a parent. So like you're always. The thought that you just going to build your own weight room and be totally autonomous is false. I think that's a
Yeah.
Something that I was duped into thinking like, oh, I'll get out of professional sports so I can do my own thing. You're always partnered with somebody.
There's always the dons.
Nothing else. The government for 30%
there's always the dons.
Revenues.
I think that even in that though, you're even in the university sector, like you still have to sell a head sport coach on what you're doing. If you're going to do something other than the typical, like to come in and just do breathing exercises for 10 minutes, your head coach has to be on board with that stuff. Like they have to, and most are, honestly. I think that it's almost like, at least I think, and a coach is different than a parent. Like a high level coach gets it, whereas the parent might be like, they might really have no idea. And so it's a little bit different sell. I mean, I've never been shot. It's been encouraging actually, or encouraged doing the breathing and those types of things. Cause I think those of us who live this, we know it. And breathing is just one example, of many.
The advent of performance directors and super specialization for these, within a professional organization, from the meditation coach to the mental coach, the strength coach, the speed coach, the obviously the hitting coach, whatever, all these people that are vying for time with the athlete, right? You have more and more performance directors orchestrating that, which is good because it gives place and relevancy to every, let's say every sector. But what I'm seeing too is that it gets formulaic. Sometimes these performance coaches are out of touch with the experience of the athlete. And it's just as detrimental as the adrenaline junkie hype rhabdo coach, like
that's gonna be a t-shirt for that.
There's always like this mitigation of I wouldn't say risk, but being vulnerable enough to form the relationships, because with athletes, and now we're hiding behind tech and data, but what's never going to go out of style is depth of understanding and relationship with an athlete and knowing what they need. So that vulnerability aspect, which you talk about, the collective training or experience is really needs to be adhered to and honored, I think. So that's what's going to limit injuries going forward, I think, is really knowing athletes beyond a data point or a predictive analytic or, what any of the other tools they're using at the high end, but also at the low end with the youth organizations, just running them till they puke or something like that. So
yeah, it's a
courageous path, I think, to really have a comprehensive program.
Yeah, it's
level.
I think the trend is simple systems trying to make complex solutions. I remember it was in Mark Bubbs has been on this podcast, and in his book Peak, it was one of the he had an example of that where you can't solve a complex system with a linear just A plus B equals C style solution. There's a different form of thinking that's involved in that. And I mean, we as human beings, and this is, I think, the fun of what we do, is we are the most complex system on this planet. Well, maybe that's a little egotistical to say. I mean, I think all of nature is awesome. But I mean, there's beauty in nature, and it's amazing to see what the human body is capable of, as well as how the different inputs have an impact on it, not just data-based inputs or mechanical inputs, but emotional inputs and environmental inputs. And, I have a lightning rod in my backpack at inputs, and I've got to run down from a mountain. And I want to get into, so, I know I've been blessed by the ability to have both sat through observing your sessions of you coaching athletes, as well as having been coached by you, and then also collaborating on workouts alongside you. And that's changed me as a coach. And so my goal is I really want to give, kind of recreate the experience of what it's like to train with you, if you will. And where all this stuff gets put together. And so you talked about awareness. And I love what you said, by the way, because I do think it's so easy to outsource awareness. Yeah, go do some yoga. And that's not bad. I'm not saying that's bad. At least the person realizes, the coach or whoever is realizing that, yes, this is important. Yes, let's put this in the system. But I think that, and maybe those coaches are also invoking awareness in their own program. Hopefully they are. But how do you Sorry, I'm rambling about. Basically, long story short is how do you invoke awareness from the time that athlete comes in the door, and what switch needs to be had that they can enter the training state?
Right. Well, just first, real quick, I think what you're talking about is scalability, and our yearn as humans to scale any operation provides the ability to carry more volume. I don't care whether you're developing agriculture to support a city or scaling a system to have more athletes to pay for the overhead of your building. But we've got to put our own yearning to scale in kind of not in check, but just we need to be aware of the pitfalls of that. And I try to impart on whoever walks in the door that they're not just a part of a scaled model and a number, so giving them identity. And first and foremost, I want to see where athletes are with their own identity. If I had a objective scale, if I could objectify and give feedback to individual awareness, I'd do it. You give a point score on their posture walking in, their vision, who do they communicate with, where do they put their water bottle and keys, how do they interact with others, what do they do from the outset, do they say hello to other, things like that. Like if I could have a scale, like, okay, we've checked the self-awareness box, which is like a relative to confidence in an environment, I think. And are you aware of other people? Are you aware of yourself and your own procedures? Are you aware of other people? I think you got to address that right away. And that's our job, is I think managing a strength conditioning environment. As you're, the whole head on a swivel, are you relationally aware with people too? So that's first and foremost. I'm adamant, like my interns and assistants, the music selection has to be on point from the start of the session. There has to be a safe feel. I don't think the fight or flight needs to happen right then when you walk in the building. You should see these parents drive from place to place to place. The kids are already on high alert. There's already like a fear that they're going to be late, a fear that they're going to be, missing out. There's this huge like FOMO scenario that just drives these people around town all day. So I want to eliminate that first and foremost. Are you comfortable when you walk in the door? Is the musical selection matching that? Is there a gameplay? Is it relevant to the end game? I have a basketball court in my gym. Are guys playing hoops? Are they playing ping pong? Are they, what are they doing to engage with the environment? I mean, it's half the battle right there, right then and there. And everyone's going to be different on different levels, with that, age, ability, awareness, athletic ability and all that kind of deal. So personality, things like that. So first and foremost is the athlete self and relationally aware around them. And then it becomes more or less a hour to hour and a half building up a communal experience to the point where there's a moment of vulnerability for everybody that's engaged with. It's fun to have multiple sports, multiple genders, multiple ages in the same room. Is there shared experience with that vulnerable state? And then is there like a building up and a encouraging crescendo and resolution to the session? We might have 5 minutes of weightlifting. It could be a lot of build up to that, so I do like to have consistency with athletes. I'm trying to get out of like a lesson rate type model but you have the freedom throughout the whole week to build that theme and establish that. So ask maybe questions on the back of that, Joel, because I know that's maybe wasn't super
unpack clear, that. That's my specialty, is unpacking. But that's good.
Okay. Anyway,
All right, let me ask a question for you. Okay.
Mhm.
So, well, as you're saying that too, I think, and I've used this example with you before, but the idea of like everyone who wants to dunk and jump higher knows that pickup basketball is the best warm up you can possibly do to dunk better. It's, on all levels, body temperature, awareness, using even the visual inputs and nervous systems and reacting and multi-directional joint warm-ups and everything you can imagine, and, peer groups, peers being around. And so you have everything, right? But then you go after you play a few games and you do maybe like 3 or 4 dunks, maybe more, but those 3 or 4 dunks count a lot more than if I was to just do, canned robot warm-up by myself or in a group, but, and then do 20 dunk attempts that weren't as good. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, yeah.
And within that, there's a creative element that I didn't mention, that within those dunks, right? I'm not telling you how to dunk. I'm not, there's not a formula to that. You're trying to work your way up to the rim or something like that. So sorry to interrupt. But.
No, it's all good. I know. Especially too. I think anyone who's worked with athletes, and I think athletics, and maybe this is a different topic for down the show, but like it just hit me today very powerfully. But like training physically is really a celebration of life in so many ways, and so I think that's something I think your work embodies very well. And so we so often see these athletes roll in. And oftentimes they're in their own little peer groups, right? And or they're by themselves and they're kind of like a part of the group, or they're worried to be there, or they're maybe really excited, but trying to. And I know you've done things like say, hey, go meet someone you don't know, or what are some things that you do to help? And I know you had talked about that in your last answer, but. You said ways to cultivate vulnerability. So maybe could you address that first on a little more specific level?
For sure. Like, okay, maybe it's, we play ballet music and we force even the boys in the group to do ballet moves. Maybe it's having Latin Appreciation Day in the MLB weight room. So we're forcing guys to not fight over musical choices or have earpods in or whatever. And so it's creating, like, there's got to be some humorous element, I think. Maybe it's, we've done a game of horse and the loser has to go by the homeless guy across the street at Starbucks, something like that. So it's just getting out of the comfort zone and with some sort of creative element in that when you break down the hardcore, shoe commercial ads where you're having to conquer the world running up the stairs by yourself and prove who your identity is by how hard you work. I think that's like such a pitfall that I think that is a kind of a half truth. Training and the body itself is a celebration of kind of what's already been done, not necessarily something you have to prove consistently all the time. That's a huge burden that many kids will drive many kids from sport, if they don't have immediate success. So I think breaking down those barriers. And, again, I use the ballet example. So we put it on Tchaikovsky during Christmas time, we do the Nutcracker, and we have, maybe there is a ballet girl who trained as a ballet, trained in ballet as a youth. I'll say, okay, hey, empowering her to lead, or, having these athletes be put in these different situations. Maybe it's having a dance contest, creating footwork ladder, matching musical beats that basically forces kids to dance. That's kind of been my vein recently, is engaging with dance and rhythm and music. If I had a music theory teacher, I'd add that. As a performance director, I would add a mandatory music theory class for every athlete in my organization. How do you match and mirror and mimic and different beat counts and things like that. So anyway, music plays a huge part in that, I think.
Yeah. So
not just for amping you up for a maximum deadlift, where everyone sits around you and screams at you, so which is part of it too. I do that. I don't mind that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good thing. It's just, it shouldn't be
like 2% of my day, 1% maybe.
Yeah, it's like, it's like a music, or it's like techno. When does the beat drop? But I mean, you can't just keep dropping the beat every like 3 seconds. It has to, everything builds up to it. It's gotta.
It's the opposite ends of the spectrum. I think anticipation, if I could sum it up, is teaching athletes to anticipate those moments of high reactivity, of subconscious involuntary muscle contraction at maximum rates of force development. That's the beauty, is when you teaching athletes to react and be calm and collected before and after that. Look at some of these Chinese weightlifters or guys at the plate, they're super calm, and it's not a massive hype show before and after the event, even though they're creating it's an incredible display of force and velocity with these people. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's being taught a lot. It's like the calmness before and after. It's all become showing up, hurrying to this event, checking the box, memorizing your warm-up routine, patting yourself on the back because you're training, and then leaving to the next thing. It's devoid of any real, I think, deeper thought, and maybe this, you could say, the spiritual element of it. I don't mind saying that.
Yeah, it's all, I think I love how everything connects in that celebration of life that we call the training session, And yeah, I do think it's a special time when athletes can come together and get rowdy, but it's also important to have that precedent. I know back when I took like Douglas Heels Be Activated, and now it's there's RPR as well now, and they, both systems put a huge priority is on breathing, team breathing before, and mindful warm-ups before games, and being in a more teaching football players to be in a more parasympathetic oriented state is really underrated. I think
I agree with you 100%, Joel. I think it's the lost, these new industries that are, or specialties around breathing, around meditation, are because we've just lost what people have been doing for thousands of years, or the whole like experience of eating together, praying before a meal, having morning, like quiet time in the morning, running. Let's just talk about running. The greatest expression of breathing and elasticity in the hip and torso and shoulder is just sprinting for a sustained period of time. Survival. Maybe it's the fight or flight down the mountain. If we just did those things that humans have been doing forever, then it's great that we're adding them back in some sort of forced formulaic way, but I would love people to experience those organically as we've done together, finding the body's natural tune and rhythm.
Yeah. Let's talk about rhythm.
That creates the robust athlete.
Yeah, let's talk about rhythm a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
no. Just tell me to shut up.
No. I know the rhythm. You mentioned it, and it's something that you've really been doing. You've had some really cool. You've had some social media posts regarding that, and I know that's been. If I could say, what's the experience that will always stick with me from even our just one-on-one training sessions where it's just me and you. And the thing I loved about that too is like even just doing various sprint drill variations to music, and where you're basically leading it. Okay, here's this iteration. Do this to the beat, and I would try to do it to the beat. And it was such an awesome. That was such an awesome. I would call it the warm up, but it was just the training, And I remember the next time I saw you, I was like, "Hey, can we do that again?" And you're like, I can't recreate that. It's like, it's only something that can be created in the moment. And that's what's awesome about it too. Is it's not that
there's a performance to it, and that's okay. And I don't, maybe not even remember it, but I think as long as you have in mind what you need to teach and the learning outcomes, it becomes this, I don't want to say performance, because it's not about me, but the teaching is this highly engaged artistic outpouring, from the coach, that's received by the athlete and empowering the athlete. And again, teaching the athletes to match and mirror and work within rhythm, dance, is maybe the training outcome in general. And then we just put stress, increasing progressive stress around those rhythms of that day in the weight training. So the training really is in the warm up. Let's say it is in the relational and self-awareness. Whereas a lot of times the warm up is just this, list of things to check off, and then you get to the weight training, and then, and so that's maybe my new thing the thing I really want to start researching and putting more time into. But your question was,
how does it come together?
Yeah. How does that come together? I think the coach, and I don't want to overstate. I don't want to say this off the cuff, but I really do think a coach needs to meditate and to really link into the point of the whole session and how it empowers and how it is a redemptive, reconciliating event in an athlete's individual life or collectively, where it is celebrating life in this day and age. The best thing I've ever seen to bring cultures, people of different races, backgrounds, religions, creeds, is a training session. It's just this bonding experience where people have to be vulnerable enough and get outside their own thinking and pretenses, and they have this collective experience. It's extremely powerful. I think the coach needs to work from that, and that's where personally I get insight, and illumination is kind of a strong word, but and what to do in that moment. There's got to be enough coaching freedom, and definitely coaches are not learning this in school or from a certification course. They're learning it from a deep experience from their own training, but also from a mindset of how do I breathe life and encourage these athletes in this experience. And it has everything to do with the physiology and the hard science, for sure. We talk about weather, we talk about external circumstances, and reading those and then orchestrating the session around that. And that's hard to scale, I think, but it's really a pure joy for me. It's my artistic expression just as much as I'm trying to paint or whatever. But there's sessions that we finish, and it's like, I didn't film it, I didn't put it on YouTube, I didn't put it on Instagram. I know what we did. I have some data around it, but how do I reproduce that? What even happened? Anyway, I know that's
so
pretty abstract.
Yeah. Well, let's bring that into. Let's bring it into maybe just a little bit of black and white in the sense that, so music-wise, yes, I mean, yes. I don't know, the whole podcast, I could just be like, well, tell me about Organica. Like, how does that help the vibe? Tell me about the basic, what are you looking for music-wise in that warm-up? Like something that's rhythmic beat, right? Like it's not Metallica necessarily, or it's not it's not
yeah,
super
for sure.
Yeah. So what's going on there?
I look for a few things. If I was going to put some, let's bring this home a little bit with some real things people can do. I really try to eliminate words in the first 15 minutes. I think, again, words have power, but I think there's when you're studying to Mozart and there's no words, or something that's purely rhythm based. And I'm not really, I'm not an expert on musical theory, and so I'm sure that there's people who are schooled in music can help me understand the vocabulary. But when you're listening to other external messages from these artists, yeah, they can be empowering. But I think when you're tuning into your body's movement patterns, that's I think that's important. That's why certain music themes are better for max PR back squatting versus footwork drill or something like that. But I typically find no words. I typically find a melody that works on a 4 count that people can match and mirror bass like in an easy way, so they can link into a simple dance step. Those are my 2 things. Often there's different channels on Spotify or whatever that I can find that. And there's one channel that I always kind of my go-to, and I have a playlist that kind of does that. That's a little bit out there, a little bit like yoga meets chill out lounge vibe type, gets you moving. So
yeah, I think you mentioned there's a revolt though with music. Is there ever a revolt?
Yeah, I mean, people want the latest top 40 hits, want something that they know, and that you got to know your audience, and that comes down to who's in your building paying your overhead. To be honest with it, you have to kind of educate and convince people like, this is why I'm doing this, to get us to this point of I wouldn't say uniformity, but there's like creativity within space that works and blends. If you look at like a crazy intersection with cars and that aren't colliding into each other, why is that? If you look like at a basketball game, the bodies flying around, but no one's fighting into each other. There's like a body's natural awareness in tight spaces. I learned this living in Spain too. The kids playing soccer in the streets. And then these tiny little spaces, and their ball handling skills, and they have a different awareness level there than kids growing up on massive fields just blasting the ball downfield. And they have a bag full of balls, and if you don't have to even go chase your own ball. You just, hey, I'll just use another one. And so anyway, awareness in tight spaces. There's definitely a musical element to that, and a dance. And a dancing rhythm to it. So, you could say mosh pits or there's a chaotic harmony there too. But yeah.
What are some of your favorite tools for using that? I know you've posted the speed ladder. That's a really simple one to get the idea. If people are just looking for, hey, well, okay, so he puts on music with no words. There's a 4 count. Okay, now what? You know what I'm saying? So what? Can you give me a few examples? And I'll start with, maybe I'll just really quickly throw one of my favorite things that you did was, it was like a lunge, even just getting into a lunge position and just manipulating, like straighten out your back leg to the beat, do internal and external rotations with your front and back leg at the same time to the beat. Just simple as that. And I'm like, and that's a lot more fun than, I don't know, here, do these 10 thoracic open books so you can lift weights. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So anyways,
I think like a mini trampoline is awesome. It's $50 on Amazon. You can use that trampoline to raise your body heat, body temperature, but also try to match beat counts and whatnot. Any line, any barrier that you have to get over and up and over, cross, whatever. The Zoom experience last 5 months has been pretty interesting with from my garage using whatever really. But yeah, so like a mini tramp, a line on a floor, holding these static positions and finding kind of this trampoline within your own body, finding these elastic points are all great tools. I don't do a lot of partner games. Maybe I need to. I do love the old gunslinger slap game where you're trying to, your partner's holding his hands out in front of him and you're trying to, draw your hand out of your pocket and slap their hands, stuff like that. But you want to create some, I think, humorous. You want to, use some humor, use something that gets people out of their comfort zone. That's always very effective. So if you can integrate that with some bouncing and matching of beats, then that's doubly effective, I believe. And then the gameplay is always great too. So okay, ping pong and basketball are 2 great tools. Ping pong's a little safer for the random ankle rolls, but something that you can get into a metric, a rhythm of movement, dribbling a ball. I think that's why basketball is powerful. It's like the dribbling effect, something you can get out of your own conscious initiatives and contractions and get into some involuntary contracting rhythm is cool. The vibration plate, side alternating vibration plate, I love it. It's one of my favorite tools that I use to initiate these things.
What do you, just the reason why too? So if someone asked and said, hey, Paul, why rhythm? Like what, show me some data. Like, I don't know, cause I know there is some stuff out there that would indicate that, and I know that you're playing a Duke. So tell me, yeah. Or just tell me why just from a general perspective too.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you're not using the tendon correctly, or, if you're not using your own body's elasticity, I don't care how strong you are. And I see it all the time in baseball too, is these guys are well-trained, finely tuned athletes. Yeah, there's a lot of wear and tear that it's hard to measure, but some ratio of elasticity is off. The stretch shortening cycle, there's either the strength portion's off, or the amortization phase of some place along, the eccentric capacities are off, whatever. So I think you take care of so much of that. And as far as the data backing that up, I think we're always trying to see, are our athletes' tendons and ligaments being used optimally and not under too much stress? That dictates what pathways, our strength training and what type of strength and resistive training we need to do. So if you can read that with the naked eye and have it collaborated with a force plate, let's say, then, hey, we're checking that box of protecting the athlete. But more so, we do that every day if we get our athlete in tune. If they come in stressed, no sleep, if they come in tight from whatever reason, then we want to realign the humerus and the femur and the joint. We want to reestablish posture. We want to reestablish breathing and these stretch responses, everything from the rib cage to our hamstrings, everything. So a lot of that can be tuned in the warm-up musically if athletes engage with the process. So it's a safety mechanism.
You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast, brought to you by Simply Faster. I know in my experience using music as well, and the more years I trained with you, the more I started putting that in my warm-ups, and you would just see it. And I've seen elite coaches use it as well to very high effect based off like what the warm-up or what the workout is of the day and the themes and the rhythm of the day and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I feel like in addition to tuning the body, and I do believe there's a strong tuning effect, I'll just say too, I did a workout, it was last week. It was with a training partner, and we started with like 20 minutes, like a little break dance circuit where I had 4 or 5 different break dance moves, and we did a little bit each time. I had some music on the Bluetooth speaker, and we did that. And then we did about 20 minutes of hurdles, like you said, over barriers to the music though. And he had never really hurdled. So I'm teaching him, and I'm like, all right, well, here's just some movements, and just try to match these movements over the hurdles to the beat. Doesn't have to be perfect. I care about the rhythm more than I care about whatever perfect is. And so we did that for about 20 minutes. And then we did like some kind of fun 200s and some bear crawls and stuff to finish. And later that afternoon, I had a session with another client doing just some jump training stuff. And I just kind of wanted to see what I had. And man, I like just shot off the ground. It was like everything was tuned up, man. I jumped about 3 inches higher than I had last time I tried it. And you can just tell, you can feel it. Like your body, it sounds a little esoteric, but your body does need that tuning. And I think about even those studies that are like tendon health with the metronome, doing like timed stuff with a metronome, slow reps is better than just doing slow reps to, I don't know, like I guess maybe someone counting or you counting in your head. Like you need something that's rhythmic to like let the body work subconsciously and react and take you also. Sorry, this ended up being long. Yeah, and to be in the zone, to take you into that like that zone state, trance state, flow state, where you're suddenly forgetting about that test you have to take, tomorrow, or relationship stuff, or or whatever. It's like, how can this induce
thinking about the breakup in the backswing of a golf swing? Any sport you play it's about timing, it's about rhythm. Sometimes I'll have football players training with baseball players or whatever. And you have to create this this consistent theme of, hey, I don't care if you're timing up a perfect tackle or a running back making a move, cutting back against an aggressive over pursuing tackler, or a person golfing, or a baseball or softball player. There's usual rhythms and timings that with all these things of the stress responses and the storing and releasing of energy. So, and most of the injuries happen when that's off for whatever reason. And then the strength work really becomes relative, and that's where the velocity based training conversations and the flywheel trainings and the eccentric overloading really comes into focus. I think is we can look at these things in this look at the muscle health or tendon health in its kind of microcosm or acute view of these things, but in reality, looking at the global elasticity and awareness, anticipatory, melodic mirroring and matching of that athlete can do. That's why small humans can produce a lot of power if they just time things up right. And then the strength work becomes really simple. It's not this massive black box. You say, I got to be X amount of, I don't need to get stronger, or I do need to get stronger, or where do we put our time and effort into these training plans? If we're not taking care of the body's natural rhythms, it's all just not guesswork, but you feel like you're chasing it a bit, you're wasting time. And that's why athletes are training better and still getting hurt. I don't know the injury rates, but I used to know them in the baseball. They're the same. And I knew youth developments, it's relatively the same. These athletes just don't know how to dance.
Yep. It's I was running today. I was doing today was an interesting day. I do a lot of exploration in my work, but today was like raining, and I was like, let's just do like a hard, let's just do like some 200s fast and short rest and the boring tempo workout. But I don't know, the rain kind of made it like this is a hard, let's have this be a hard workout and let's do this. And I just could feel, but it's fun because you can feel the results of all the exploration and rhythm you've done. Like I was so acutely aware of the role of my upper body and my trunk coordinating the ground strike, like in the air. You know what I'm saying? Like where there's rhythm and timing in the air to create a better ground strike. And because I've been doing a ton of one arm.
Talking about with, using gravity.
Yeah.
In the running, that's been a huge factor in my renaissance of sprinting again. Is understanding the role of soaking up energy instead of just fighting it all the time.
Yes.
Trying to create these massive collisions into the ground and more ground force reaction, more, I need to increase my force, but at 42, I don't need to do that. But maybe most people don't need to do that. They just need to work with gravity, running downhill from a lightning strike,
Yeah, there's so much.
Sorry to interrupt, Joel.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, there's an immense amount of free energy return inherent in the body, and it's just fun to once you've been through the process enough. I would have never noticed this when I was 21, but at 36 to literally feel my body shifting and timing itself in space to prepare for the next step. And you feel the rhythm of how that's different. It's like, I'm not going to get hurt running like this. I know for a fact I will not get hurt running like this. Now, I'm not probably running fast enough to get hurt and running these 200s more tempo style, but it's cool to feel that. You mentioned, sprinting would be another conversation because I know we've talked about that too, but maybe let's touch that for just a minute because I want to get to the weightlifting piece, as well, because I know we've talked about the awareness, the rhythm. I know there's a lot of other elements that we haven't really talked about, like grip or like how you tend to do a lot of mobility opening up and things like that, and you've rekindled your love for sprinting. Maybe let's just touch on those real quick because I do want to get to the weightlifting piece. But tell me a little bit about people come in. There's awareness. There's stuff to rhythm. What are some other key elements that you're usually trying to get to, like, sprinting, grip, opening, creativity, what's some other stuff?
Yeah. If we can, I think I've had a passion for the hamstring just probably because my hamstrings have been under assault from trying to run super high and have these front side sprint mechanics that are like picture perfect, whatever that is. So how do I have a healthy hamstring and hip and knee and back and posture? How do I get enough eccentric loading on those if I'm not sprinting all the time? And the COVID has helped me get outside and sprint daily and not try to piece it together with a tool like the yo-yo hamstring, which I love. I've kind of championed the last states, but I don't need to try to replicate these high centric velocities on my posterior chain. I'm simply just sprinting daily. My body has never been healthier, and then adding some different technical changes that I've kind of learned from you and your buddy Bar about knee placement, changing shin angles, especially in acceleration phases and things like that. Learning, associating breathing and the stretch response in that front sling, so to speak. And I would say the grip strength, initiating the grip strength with these young athletes is just kind of a massive hole in a lot of these kids' development. Is how can they hold their shoulders in the right spot? How can they understand what shin angles and changing shin angles mean? And how do they consistently sprint? That's kind of like my mission statement, is like getting an adult or a kid just to run better, horizontally move better. It has a huge association to pitching as well, and all these other sports where you're having to displace the hips forward all the time, and then initiate your body's elasticity and optimal efficiency rates and things like that. Movement economy. Boom. That's my passion right now. Is like, and COVID's kind of brought that on a little bit more, put that into focus, because I have to go to the tracks. I have to run outside, and I'm not chained to a large overhead and being inside in a gym. Where as soon as I step outside the gym, I'm not making money for the gym. That's been a very liberating experience these last 5 months.
Tell me, Paul, just to finish out here. So the crescendo, right? Like, we're working up, you have a goal of the day. And I think probably typically there's some sort of strength outcome in that day that we would like to achieve. And yes. Tell me how things change. How does the music change? How does that transition to, how long is the strength typically after all these warm-up activities? And how does that shake out? First
of all, there's a garbage trucks outside my garage right now, so hopefully you can still hear me. But if I put it simply, there's 5 minutes in every session that the strength adaptation you're looking for. Everything from the grip to the hamstring to the posture alignment to the rhythmic alignments and tempos and tuning leads into that 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes of strength backs up the goal and the movement goal of the day, or really where along the force velocity curve you want to be working as well. And then that's when you put on the Metallica maybe for a song, or you change you change the mood, and again, lyrics are one thing, but I think there's heavy guitar chords. And again, I'm not a music expert, but I know there's a change that happens. There's an aggression. Do we want to live in that aggressive state for 90 minutes, or do we want to live it in for 5 minutes? Being wise and tempering your team or your athletes to, don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes, so to speak. Like, save those bullets for when it really matters. But there's a whole lead up process to that maximum fight or flight state. And then discussion becomes, how much do you live in that during the week? And then that's when you have Whoop bands and a million other bio feedback technical devices that are trying to take the place of coaches to really do that, to, eliminate the human element in making those assessments. But yeah, that's what I would sum it up. I mean, the crescendo happens, and then you need to have the processing moment and the encouraging moment where you get you deactivate the sympathetic nervous system, get into the rest and digest mode. Zebras. I read a good book in my anatomy class. Something. I think the title is why zebras don't get ulcers.
Yeah.
They're in maximum fight or flight mode, or they're just walking around on the Serengeti, eating and hanging out. Or but there's always an awareness, I think. But animals don't have these health issues because they don't fudge the lines there. It's either like I'm going to get eaten, or I'm going to rest and eat. And that's the biggest thing I'm trying to help students understand. It's like, it doesn't have to be this high anxiety moment all the time of getting to the weight room at 5 a.m. to go through a warm-up list and then max out and then go to class or whatever, or rush after school to the weight room and you're going to be berated by your coach. You're going to be running laps. Exercise isn't a punishment, and it's a joy. It's a celebration of life in your own body. And it's actually the one time athletes can be in total control of their bodies, because you don't have to have a coach who's going to bench you, or there's a pitch that you swing and miss at. There's so much failure in sport. If we can have the training environment be a highly empowering, redemptive experience, athletes are going to be happier and healthier and move rhythmically better and in these elastic in harmony elastically. And that's got to be the majority of the injuries. Yeah, there's certain strength deficits, but you're going to see people getting a lot stronger and not being able to handle and anticipate changes in games and blow out nonetheless.
That's a great sum up. I think maybe that's a right? A good title. Exercise is a celebration, not a punishment. If you were to,
oh man,
there we go. It'll save me a few seconds.
You'd be surprised
later.
Though. You worked in college sport, where I think it's different than the beginning youth stages I'm seeing now. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I think there's a hell of a lot of anxiety coming into a weight room. I have to keep up with the other kids so I can get a scholarship. My parent is making me do this. My peers are making me do this. I love a lot of aspects of my gym. We don't have free t-shirts. We don't have a lot of hype. There's no sign on the door. It's the onus is completely on the athlete himself. There's a lot of just ownership in the whole experience. It's mixed genders, mixed races, mixed economic states, and the kids come out of the experience like fully aware human beings that can be great members of society, whether or not they make the pros or not. And that's my mission statement, is to equip young people to really be advocates for themselves, love other people, celebrate the body, and not look at it as like a source of massive anxiety.
I love that, man. Well, hey, that's an awesome closing statement. There's nothing I can add to that. So, dude, Paul, thanks so much, man. That was an awesome talk. And every time I talk to you, it makes me a better coach and a better human being. So I appreciate it, man.
Well, my one plug is to, anybody who's ever in town, come experience, come share, come
in Monterey, Salinas.
Yeah. Come have a collective experience. And, because that's when you start to share these things, you start to breathe life and I don't want to be too sappy, but you really start to heal, and you come to common ground with other people, because not two people are going to have exactly the same viewpoints. But if you can train together, you can share that experience and be vulnerable together. Boom. It's pretty cool. And we can learn from each other. So I really enjoy when people stop by and say, what's up, and have a good day. It's yeah.
Awesome.
It only costs your mind.
It only costs your mind. Hopefully in a good way, right?
No, actually strike that from it only costs the ability just to be a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
And enter in, and that's what the beauty of coaching is, isn't it? Absolutely. That shared coaching experience, and that's what we crave. It's just to go through this collective coaching experience together. Probably why your podcast is so popular. People being vulnerable about what they do and sharing that experience. So I'm glad to be it's just a tiny, tiny, tiny link part of that, you know?
Yeah. Well, hey, it was great having you, Paul. Thanks again, man.
Okay, buddy. I'll see you soon. Talk to you later.
That does it for another show. Thanks for being here today with us. I appreciate you all as listeners, and you all really make this thing possible. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us out by leaving us a rating, review, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever you're listening to the show on. Also wanted to give one last shout out to our sponsor, simplyfaster.com, suppliers of high-end training technology, Freelap timing system, K-Box, GymAware. K-Box and Freelap are two of Paul's favorite that you'll see at his gym, amongst other things. So be sure to check out simplyfaster.com, support them. We've been appreciative of their sponsorship over the years. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.